I was stacking boxes of donated winter coats in the church basement when the hum of the fluorescent lights changed pitch. Not louder, just wrong, like the room was listening. By the time I looked up, she was already there. Leaning in the doorway, arms crossed. "Kyle," Emily said, "you've seen it." Her voice had that clipped, careful edge people use when they're trying to keep a secret in public. "I ran this charity, the Cedar Grove Outreach Center, for almost 8 years. We handed out food, coats, school supplies, the whole small-town safety net." Emily was technically a volunteer coordinator. In reality, she ran the gossip mill. And right now, she was feeding me something she thought would choke me. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer, just handed me her phone. It was a Facebook post, a photo. Me, in the parking lot of the Red Lantern Motel, one arm around a woman's waist, head bent close enough that anyone looking would assume the worst. The caption was only 2 words, "Our hero." No hashtags, no explanation, just enough to rot everything from the inside. "That's not," I started, but stopped. Because here's the thing, it was me. And it was her. Rebecca. Dark hair, easy laugh, the kind of woman who always had her keys in her hand before she reached the door. She was married. Not to me. Emily was still watching me, waiting to see if I'd sweat. I didn't. "When did this go up?" I asked. "Half an hour ago. It's all over town." Her eyes had that mix of pity and glee. Small towns love to watch a man fall, especially if he's been the one holding things together. Rebecca and I, it wasn't what people thought. Not exactly, but there's no explaining that when a photo like that lands online. No one cares about context. They just need a story they can tell over pie at the diner. And I already knew who had posted it. Or at least, I thought I did. The post came from Mark Danner's account. Mark, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Mark, whose wife had once been our biggest donor, until the day she stopped returning my calls. It wasn't just an old grudge. Mark was the kind of man who could make a rumor into a religion. By noon, 3 board members had called. Not to ask what happened, not to check if it was true, just to tell me we needed to discuss next steps, which was code for, "You're finished here." I kept working, unloading canned goods from a van. My hands moved, but my head was already 3 steps ahead. I'd been expecting something like this for months. The truth. Rebecca wasn't just a fling. She was my insurance policy. Not in the way you think. There was no blackmail, no money. She had information. About the charity, about people in town who liked to think their donations bought sainthood. I'd been careful. Too careful for this photo to be an accident. That night, I didn't go home. My house was 3 blocks from the center, but it would be lit up like a stage by now. People slowing their cars, pretending they were checking their phones while they peered through my front windows. Instead, I drove out to the lake. Parked in the dark. I didn't text Rebecca. Didn't call. If she was smart, she'd be doing exactly the same. The first real hit came the next morning. A letter, not an email, a letter, from the board. I was suspended, pending investigation. The word might as well have been execution. No mention of my years of work. No question about whether I wanted to defend myself. Just a clean slice of exile. I still didn't panic. Because I had something Mark didn't know about. A thumb drive, buried inside an old shoebox under the center's basement stairs. Rebecca had given it to me 6 months ago. And if anyone tried to drag me under, that little piece of plastic could take down half the county. Only, when I went to get it, the shoebox was gone. I stood there in the damp basement air. The smell of cardboard and dust pressing in. The spot under the stairs was empty. Not disturbed, empty, like it had been gone a while. And suddenly, I couldn't be sure Rebecca was still on my side. I drove to her house. Parked across the street. Her husband's truck was gone, but the lights in the kitchen were on, and through the window I saw her, phone in one hand, pacing fast. When she turned, I caught a glimpse of her face. She was crying, or laughing. It's hard to tell the difference at that distance. I didn't knock. I waited until her husband's truck pulled up an hour later, then drove away. If Rebecca had flipped, confronting her would only make me bleed faster. I needed to know who else had a stake in this, and who was holding the knife. 2 days later, Mark showed up at the center. He didn't come inside, just stood across the street, leaning against his car, arms folded like he was watching the place burn. I almost went to him, almost asked what he wanted. But then I saw Emily step out to talk to him, and the way she smiled told me more than any conversation could. Emily wasn't just a gossip. She was a broker. She'd been trading information in this town for years, and I'd given her more than I realized. Now she'd picked her side, which meant she knew about Rebecca, which meant she might know about the thumb drive. The pressure built fast. Calls from donors, concern questions from the local paper, people I'd known since grade school suddenly acting like they couldn't remember my name. It was exile before the verdict. I could feel the ground moving under me. And still, I didn't use the backup plan. Not yet. On the 3rd night, Rebecca called. "They have it," she said. No greeting, no small talk. She meant the drive. Though, I already knew, I asked, Who? Emily. She's not going to stop. She wants you gone. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. Then she whispered. She said she'd make it worse if you try to fight. Here's the part no one will believe. I didn't care about the drive. Not anymore, because the real insurance was never in that shoebox. It was in my head. Every deal, every off-the-books favor, every donor who'd written a check to make a problem disappear. I knew all of it, and if I went down, I'd take them with me. The photo, the exile, the whispers, it was all noise. The real game was whether I was willing to burn the whole place to the ground, and I was. I walked into the next board meeting uninvited, sat down at the head of the table, laid my phone on the wood. I've drafted a letter to the paper, I said. Names, dates, numbers, everything. Emily went pale. Mark stared. I leave quietly, I continued, and the letter disappears. You push this any further, and it runs front page by Friday. Silence. Then, one by one, they looked away. By the time I walked out, Cedar Grove was already dead. It just hadn't noticed yet.